the last section that I thought I would just read is it's from the last chapter, which is actually called Geek Girls Unite. And it's the call to action for readers to kind of get together and just talk about all the things that make them awesome, and hopefully that will be infectious and spread, and they'll just meet more and more awesome people. And in addition to kind of having girls and just anybody I could find contribute to the writing process, I also, unlike the other books that I've written, and really anything else that I've ever written, period, I included some personal stuff in the book. And actually, because my amazing editor and agent suggested, they're like, there's not enough, you're not in this. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. They're like, no, I think you actually need to put a little bit of yourself in here. So I share in the last chapter this really embarrassing anecdote, which of course I'll share with you all today. And all of it's true and all of it's embarrassing, but makes us who we are, right? So it's good. Okay. While our time together is coming to an end, okay. Okay. Acknowledging and accepting your geekiness isn't always an easy task at any age, especially when you've tried your hardest to fit in and all you seem to do is stand out. When I think back to what I was like in high school, it was hard for me not to cringe and face palm. I despised most of my friends. Boys often hid from me. That's a true story. That's in the memoir. And no matter how hard I looked, I just couldn't seem to find my niche. One Saturday night, towards the end of senior year, my longtime bestie, Jessica, was having people over because her parents were out of town. The idea of drinking wine coolers in the comfort of her traditional tutor was much more appealing than congregating outside at other underage drinking spots. I don't know if you guys had underage drinking spots in your town. Yeah. And they always had really creative names. For me, it was The Rock, which was a rock by the public transportation system, so it was in the woods, or The Ravine, which was this ravine behind this kind of street place, and that's where people would literally break their legs to go drink a Zima while their parents were out of town. Okay. So I drove over by myself because I couldn't find anyone to carpool with, and the moment I walked in the door, I knew the night was going to suck. I didn't drink or smoke in high school, so people treated me like a narc. In other words, they tolerated my presence, but secretly wished I would leave. This one kid we hung out with, Rob, wasn't so stealth with his contempt for me. However, on this particular evening, he was being oddly nice and charming. I should have known it was a setup because Rob was rotten. He was the kid who in 7th grade asked all the girls in English class if their hymen was hanging, and he would ruin every photo op by hanging brains. Do you guys know what that is? No. Okay, well, I'll explain. It's when you dangle your man bits, your berries, outside of your fly, and in a group photo picture, and so then no one knows until the picture gets developed that the berries are out of the tree, if you will. That was him. So he's a really awesome person. Okay, so like I said, he's rotten. After a couple hours chatting me up, he asked when I was leaving and if he could have a ride home. Me being the trusting, gullible sack I was, I said sure, and told him my ETD was 15 minutes. I made the rounds, saying my goodbyes, and told Rob it was time to hoof it. It was then that he told me he didn't need a ride anymore. Thought nothing of it, walked alone to my parents' Subaru, which was parked on the street in front of Jessica's house. As I slowly approached the station wagon, I started to notice these white polka dots all over the car. I wasn't more than 5 feet away when it clicked. I'd been egged. And by that little weasel Rob. The shock wore off the second I heard giggle fits erupting behind me, and that's when I started to feel the punch in my gut and the lump in my throat. First came the tears, then came the rage. By this time, a small crowd of people had gathered on the lawn to see what the commotion was all about. Jessica tried to calm me down, but I was crazy mad, like Christian Bale on the set of Terminator. So I grabbed her by the shoulders and shoved her aside. I stormed into the house to find Rob sitting in the den hysterically laughing. I'm not sure what I said or screamed, but whatever it was, it just made him cackle harder. Realizing I had to be home in 45 minutes and my parents' car looked like an omelet, I I raced over to the nearest car wash and prayed that BP's triple foam system would eliminate all the remnants of the eggs and this entire night. As I drove, I sobbed, my nose ran, and my body heaved. Not only had I been humiliated in front of all my so-called friends, but the poor station wagon was one big egged eyesore. I felt like all the neighboring drivers were pointing and mocking at my pain, and that made me cry even harder. This should also be explained that I didn't have a car when I was in high school, so I always had to borrow my parents' car. And to borrow my parents' car was like this huge deal. You know, it's like, Mom, can I borrow your car? Do you have, can someone else drive? No, no one else can drive. Where are you going? Like, it was like, you know, I was asking to borrow her lawn or something for the evening. It was just a really big deal. So the idea of me tarnishing any part of the car was like a big deal. Okay, so I'm in the car crying. Then, out of nowhere, I hear a voice. It was sweet, soothing, and reassuring. This is embarrassing, but I'm going to keep reading. I took a couple of deep breaths, and the tears soon stopped. No, it wasn't God, as ashamed as I am to admit. It was Dave Matthews. And he was singing, "I'll Back You Up." And in that moment, his lyrics were all the encouragement I needed to know that everything was going to be okay. Do what you will, always. Walk where you like, your steps. Do as you please, I'll back you up. I finally discovered that something that would never let me down or abandon me, something that would never egg my car, or agree to go to homecoming with me, only to call me 2 days later and back out because he thought he'd have more fun going with someone else. That's a true story. And this is what's funny, and I'll do this as a tangent too. So this kid, who agreed to go to homecoming with me, and then called me back and was like, I think I'd have more fun going with someone else. Her name was also Leslie, okay? And then, senior year, the guy that hid from me ended up going to homecoming with the same Leslie. This girl was my nightmare. Okay. So, something that made me happier than I had thought possible. I discovered music, geeked out, and knew my life would never be the same. More than 10 years later, I'm over those high school flights. But I'm still completely head over heels in love with music. Sure, my tastes have changed over the years, but I still get butterflies when I hear an amazing song, whether it be for the first or the 100th time. That's why I'll always be proud to call myself a music geek girl, and I'll never say goodbye, just a Dave Matthews song, to the boxes of Maxell XL2 tapes filled with all the DMV bootleg live shows I've collected during my late teens. And they now are like taking up room in my apartment because my mom made me move them out of the house. So I don't even have a tape player anymore. That's what's so funny. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these tapes, but I can't get rid of them. So that's just a little taste of the book. And now Jenny is going to come up and just tickle your ears with amazing sounds. Maybe not as intimately as that, but she's amazing. She's in the book, and I first learned about Jenny from actually when you were doing the Dinosaur Trail with Justin Pierre from Motion City Soundtrack. You played NYU, and you each covered each other's songs, and instantly Smitten Kitten fell in love, and so I'm so thrilled that she agreed to just kind of drop by and play some songs. So enjoy as much as I have